So today I'm going to teach you how to avoid being detained by the police. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and in my country it's still technically illegal to ride PEV, but generally it's not really looked down upon by the police or anyone else. Moving to Japan, I knew that this is going to be a country that's a little bit more strict on the rules and a country that is very much for respect, and I appreciate that.
Japan traffic. You get to a road, if there is no signal, you do not cross, because you will get looks from people. People will make you feel bad about existing.
As a foreigner living here, there are a lot of costs that are involved that you don't necessarily want to have to pay, and as a result, I try and save money on transport by using an electric skateboard. Before buying the skateboard, I obviously did a little bit of research. There wasn't really any exact rule outlining electric skateboards themselves. There was a bunch of rules around a bunch of different other things, but nothing exactly around that. So being that I missed my board at home, I went and bit the bullet and bought one. It's this Evolve Stoke to be exact. It's a fantastic little board and I highly recommend it to anybody who's looking for an electric skateboard that is small and compact and you can take on a plane. So let me get into the story about how I actually got detained by the police. So for the past maybe month or two now, I've been riding my skateboard every day to work, and I've ridden past police officers a bunch of times and I've never had any issues. This time I saw a police officer coming up behind me, so I decided to slow down a little bit and try and be respectful. I was riding on the bike lane and they came up next to me and sort of stopped and they asked me to get off the board, so I did. I think a big key with the police here in Japan is to not get agitated and not get upset, because otherwise they'll end up calling a bunch of different people and there will just be a whole heap of officers just kind of standing there at some point. So that didn't happen to me. Luckily, I understand and can speak a little bit of Japanese, so I was able to kind of reason with them and let them know what I was doing and be very honest about the whole situation. They were asking me a bunch of questions like how fast does it go, how much did it cost, which company is it from. They then asked me if it's okay if I jump in the police car and go to the police station. Whilst I was at the police station, I took my board inside and I sat in one of those like interrogation rooms where there was kind of like a screen in between me and the officer, and they were just asking me a bunch of questions. This is where I got a little bit scared, but the atmosphere of the whole interaction was more or less friendly from the police officers. At this point, they started to explain to me a whole bunch of different rules. At first, they asked me if I have a driver's license, because electric vehicles in Japan require a driver's license, even if it's one of those like Segway electric scooters. They require a registration plate and a driver's license. I told them I don't have one here in Japan yet, and if that is a problem, I could definitely get one before jumping back on the board. But then after they did a little bit more research, they came to me and changed their mind, saying that actually you can't ride this regardless of if you have a driver's license or not. They said that driver's licenses are limited to only things with handles such as scooters. So I wondered, what does that leave me with? I asked them where I could ride the board. The road? They said no. Well, maybe the footpath? No. And the bike lane? Definitely not. As far as I was concerned, they weren't letting me ride this thing anywhere. I may as well hang up the board and walk away. I asked them what law that I'm breaking, and they showed me a specific law that I'll put on the screen here. The important part of this law is the highly trafficked areas part. See, highly trafficked is a pretty subjective term and it can mean a whole range of different things. It doesn't help that there's a complicated issue with the electrics of the board where that adds another element to it that they're also unsure of. Upon doing some research, which included looking at articles and talking to some people in the electric skateboard community here in Japan, it seems that the general kind of consensus is it's okay and you are allowed to ride as long as it's on non-busy streets. The people who have had issues before on this electric page, they tend to just say that they tell the police officer that they're not breaking any rules, that they understand their rights, and they're not allowed to be detained because there is no law that they're breaking. This to me seems a little bit inappropriate in my condition because I was just inside of a police station for about 30 minutes to an hour, and if I get detained again, there may be penalties or even deportation. So I wanted to make sure that I really understood what I was talking about before I went back to the police station to argue my case. Here's what I found. So looking around, there was an article that I'll link in the description below that basically outlines the fact that there is this law that they quoted to me, and that highly trafficked section is actually outlined in a court case that happened in Nagoya. And due to that simple fact, I was able to talk to the police officers and ask them if it's okay that I go on these low trafficked areas. They did a bunch of research to try and find something else that contradicts it, but in the end they came up with nothing really. Because skateboard isn't generally accepted in Japan, despite it being included in the recent Olympics, they did ask me that if I see people on the street, that I pick up the board and walk. To be honest, I do think it's a little strict still, because personally I don't really see the difference between bicycles and electric vehicles, but if that's the compromise that I have to use, then I'm happy to oblige by it. I guess the moral of my story is that I didn't have any personal issues with the police. I think they handled everything very professionally, and I appreciate that they were willing to let me talk and argue my case in the end of the day. It did take me a bit of research and convincing, but when I brought them the facts, they seemed to agree with me as well. If you're watching this video anytime in the near future, there is a good chance that the new law that's been proposed will be in place by now. This new law suggests that scooters or electric skateboards that can only reach a maximum speed of 20 kilometers per hour would be allowed without a license or a helmet. I think this is a really fantastic step forward considering how slow the Japanese government normally moves. The fact that this is being accepted way quicker than in my country is fantastic. Furthermore, I really don't know where that leaves electric vehicles that go above that speed. I'm hoping that we will be given the opportunity by the Japanese government to acquire the driver's license in order that I may be able to enjoy my board without the speed limiter on it. But for now, I promise them that I'll use the speed limiter, be very safe around people, ensure that I'm not disturbing anybody, and use very quiet streets on my commute to work. How do you think the Japanese police officers handle themselves in this story? I personally think I had a really great experience with the police officers, and I truly believe that this is the most productive way forward. I did say to them that I have seen people who just ignore the police and continue doing what they're doing. I suggested to them that I would rather build a relationship with a police station in my area so that they understand that I will be doing this in a safe manner, as opposed to going behind their backs and then getting in trouble again and trying to negotiate my way out. I think this was a really interesting case study, and I hope to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you're interested in more Japan, electric skateboarding, or Osu content, make sure to hit that subscribe button and watch this video right here.